C-E-L-T-I-C Celtic. C-E-L-T-I-C Celtic. Hiya, my name's Kevin Graham and welcome to your Wednesday afternoon A Celtic State of Mind bulletin. The bulletin that claps if it wants to clap. John, how's things today?
All right, Kev, hail, mate. How are you?
Not too bad. Sorry we were running a bit late there. I've just jumped on because real life got in the way. when I was trying to come on here.
That will happen. That will happen.
Yes, I think you were sitting there panicking, wondering if you were going to have to do this solo, waiting on me to actually log in there. John, well, what we're going to do, we'll have a wee look back over the last week and where we are in Europe and in the league and stuff like that. But I think the first thing we've got to deal with is the mainstream media's mischievous linking of Ange Postecoglou to every club in England. For me, it shows that they're actually scared of him because over the last the 3 seasons that Steven Gerrard was in charge of Rangers, he wasn't linked with a move anywhere. He wasn't linked with a move anywhere at all. And we seem to be getting this on a daily and weekly basis that Ange Postecoglou is going to pack up and leave us and go to the dream ship, which is the English Premiership. Ange Postecoglou says he's already at a big club. He's already spoke quite a bit at length, John, about how he's had other interviews and they've just never came to the crunch. He spoke about when he'd done the phone call with Dermot Desmond, he did actually say when he came off the phone to his wife, I think I've got that job.
Yeah.
He's not going to go to Brighton and Leicester, and that's no, we are a far bigger club than Brighton and Leicester. I'm not actually going to say no disrespect to them. No, massive disrespect for them. We are absolutely massive compared to Brighton and Leicester.
Well, funny, I was thinking about this the other day after listening to a couple of arguments about it. The first thing I need to say is, and especially to caveat this, because we're going to be talking about the results later, one of which wasn't great. So I've made a terrible mistake in investing in Ange as a man, right? So I know that's going to end badly. It'll probably be more painful than one of my divorces. But, I've made that terrible mistake of buying into the man, not just the manager, because I think he's brilliant. He's inspirational, he's eloquent, he's empathetic. He has all the talents that you'd want in a manager and all the characteristics you'd want in a man. So I'm overly bought into him, and it is going to be painful if he does move on eventually, or when he does move on. I suppose it's inevitable, but I am holding out hope that his character has a lot to do with this. I'm holding out hope that he won't just jump, at the first even half decent opportunity that comes along. His family's settled here. He knows we gave him this opportunity. He seems invested in the club. He seems to get what it's all about and like it here. And I'm hoping that counts for more than piles of money elsewhere, because he could really forge a legend here. He really could become, a Jock Stein figure if he decided to stay. Now, that's the way I see it, so I know it's going to be painful. And I hope that people, before they jump on me for criticising some of the things he's done recently at the end, understand what I've just said and take that into account. But, I was listening to, what was it, like Off the Ball or something the other day, an Irish show, and they had this girl was an Irish Celtic supporter, and she was trying to defend against one guy that covers the EPL and another just a general presenter, and their opinion of us is, I suppose, the way that the opinion of most people in England is just we're a parochial wee club, with faded glory and all that. So they were seriously questioning her as to why, he wouldn't go to Brighton. And then she managed to win that argument, but someone then mentioned Aston Villa, and they were like, oh, well, Aston Villa's a big club, big history and all the rest of it. He'd definitely go there, wouldn't he? Well, no, he definitely wouldn't, So I think Ange has a long way to go with us. I hope I'm right about that. I really do hope I'm right about that. Because I don't want my heart broken, basically. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I don't, because I will be very upset when he goes, because I think he's a top man, and I hope we can keep him for as long as humanly possible.
I know what you're saying there. We hope that we probably are still rattled by Brendan Rodgers doing the midnight flit. Even though Big Rambo Alan McInally told me and Paul 2 months before it was going to happen, and we were like, "Aye, really?" He says, "No, it is going to happen." I went, "All right, so he's going to go to Leicester then." So when that came about, it didn't come as a surprise, but the speed it happened came as a surprise that was going to happen. For me, I think Postecoglou's got a wider world view than the parochial English view. Yeah. It's a big wide world out there. He's an Australian. He knows it's a big wide world out there. And he knows that doing something in Europe, taking a team like Celtic into Europe and doing well in Europe, playing his brand of football, will get him more noticed than finishing 15th in the Premier League with Leicester and Brighton. That's where I'm coming from. That's where I'm coming from as well. IH decorating. People need to stop being naive. If Ange feels another club offers him and his family more than Celtic, then he will go to the EPL. The EPL is seen as the top of the tree for money. I do get that point if he was Brendan Rodgers, because Rodgers has never had his ambition. I think when you look at Postecoglou's career, John, I think he's got to a club bigger than what he maybe expected to get to quicker, and he's not going to pass it over to go to a Leicester or a Brighton. Somebody in the comments says Brighton have just appointed a new manager, actually. Robert Little comes in and says Brighton have got a new manager, so that one finished. At the moment, Leicester still have a manager. The aforementioned Brendan Rodgers, and I've been to Leicester. I went to a testimonial in Leicester once when Martin O'Neill was the manager, and Leicester's not a very nice place, and I'll apologise to anybody for Leicester. It was one of the worst trips I've had been to England to watch the mighty hoops. We never got treated very well, and we weren't made very welcome. But I think Ange Postecoglou sees a bigger picture than finishing mid-table in the EPL. No,
well, I mean, that was the point I was just making, though. He's saying that it's naive to think it won't. Yes, it is, if you're looking at the kind of manager that we're accustomed to, or the kind of manager most people are accustomed to. I'm hoping that Ange is a better man than that, who has a bit more character about him than that. Maybe that's completely naive, but not everything's about money. And I think that he knows that. He's old enough now to know that. Not everything's about money. It's important that your family is happy. It's important that you're settled. It's important that you enjoy your work. And ultimately, the older you get, the more that becomes true in your life. I think the more you appreciate that. It's not just about flitting from place to place, trying to make as much as you can, grasping, I mean, don't get me wrong. If we were having this discussion about Brendan Rodgers, I'd say he was already out the door. There's different men have different characters, and I'm hoping that and everything else Ange has done so far, he's been exceptional for me on a personal level. I think he's been exceptional. So I'm hoping that counts for something. Now, ultimately, if there's a massive job comes in, maybe his ambition gets the better of him. But I just don't see him, as you say, leaving for some mediocre mid-table or bottom-table club. But, I don't see that what's in that for him on a personal level.
I don't see that. David Crines, Ange won't leave before 3 full seasons minimum. Hopefully he stays longer. The grass is not greener. I'm going to go by the guys who are more knowledgeable on this, John. And the guys that are more knowledgeable on this are the boys for Celts Down Under, who are in Japan and also in Australia. And they say Postecoglou's 3 seasons. He doesn't. The only time that he's been less than 3 seasons was Melbourne. Can't remember the name of the team. Victory, and then he went and took the Australian national job. That was the only time he had been there a season. So I think we've probably got a 3-year shelf life if he continues being successful. And I like this shout, John, from JR. I hope nobody shot you, JR, today. That's one for the kid. That's one for the kids there, John. That's one for the kids.
Really dating yourself there, mate.
Aye, definitely. Ange, Greece Euro 2028. The guys for Celtic down under could see him going to Spain or Germany as his next move.
Yeah. Well, again, I don't think his next move is going to be anytime soon, so I won't just put that out to bed. But he is going to be, because he has been successful and because he does come across well, he gets people's attention. So therefore, every single time the manager merry-go-round opens in England, he'll be the first name thrown onto it. So we're going to get this for the next few years. It's going to get really quite tedious, to be honest with you. So I'm hoping it's something we ignore until like a properly huge club comes in for him. Where the Real Madrids of the world, you just can't ignore it. So until that point, I'm not going to concern myself about it. But it's mischief making, and it's trying to unsettle them, and it's trying to unsettle us, So, but we know it's the usual characters, isn't it? If you're reading your Daily Record and your Evening Times and all the rest of it, then you're going to be reading the same old rubbish. So from the same old sources. So. Just nonsense, just made up to annoy us.
Definitely. Why no? Gracie speaks the language, Kev. Well, I didn't mean to bring up that comment. I actually clicked my mouse by mistake there. But no, I can see him going to Greece because he's already made a couple of clips about when I'm retired on a beach in Greece. So he's already made a couple of clips that's where he sees himself going back. This is a comment that I meant to bring up. Roddy McDonald agreed John's success will breed rumours, and as long as we've got success, keep these rumours actually coming. And Donny boy, Kevin, I noticed the blue vase is back. Kevin Graham, thanks for pointing that out because I didn't actually notice it. That means somebody's bought my wife's flowers and it wasn't me. So I want to thanks for pointing that out. I'll need to get to the bottom of that, Donny boy. Now you've pointed it out.
Some place to find out.
Aye, definitely, aye.
It's a dramatic podcast today.
There's over 300 people watching just now. Please like and subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, it helps the channel. We're up at the Content Awards again for Best Video Content, which is brilliant, which is a massive compliment to Paul and Kelvin and all the guys at the back that you didn't see it make these videos. Me and John just come on and sit and do these streams, but what Kelvin and Paul and that do in the background is utterly fantastic, and it's great to see them getting recognised. So get voting for us and these guys. Hopefully we can make it another award that we can actually get.
Right. But Kev, in spirit of the times that we're in, can we not just demand that everyone votes? Because we have to demand, don't we? You don't have to earn that respect, do you? Can't you just demand it? The same way that we have been in the last number of weeks. Can't we just insist that you vote, regardless of whether you want to or not, and demand your respect? But I suppose that's another matter, I suppose. The demand that you subservient and indulge in mourn porn for weeks and weeks and weeks. I will quickly move on there. Monty tells me it was him that bought my wife the flowers. I'm all right then, Monty. I'm fine. I'm all right with that. Right, let's bring it down a bit. I'm going to talk about Graeme Souness, since he sort of went into that wee bit there. Now, Graeme Souness called Celtic Football Club the unacceptable face of Scottish football after the weekend. Now, for me, Graeme Souness has been a bit hypocritical here. For me, he is the one man, him and David Murray, that killed Scottish football. He's been hypocritical because he takes a shilling from the right-wing Murdoch media where he actually does all his talking, and it's a very shock jock tactic that he's actually took. Especially the right-wing media who seem to be all for free speech unless you're actually talking against what they actually believe in, funnily enough. And the fact that he looks like an infected colostomy bag means that we shouldn't actually even listen to his opinions.
he was just trying to be smart here. I noticed that I saw it quoted this morning that he was trying to do an Ian Archer moment. If he was gone for an Ian Archer moment, he's utterly failed, because I just look at the videos in the back, his backstory of his time at Rangers. He can't claim that we are the unacceptable face of Scottish football with what he's been involved in, and that's before I mention EBTs and tax dodging and stuff like that.
I was just going to say, Kev. I mean, I didn't know that you were bringing that up, but in the couple of seconds you were talking, I wrote down. He's writing for the Sun at Hillsborough. After Hillsborough, he wrote for the Sun. The fact he was an absolute thug as a player. Responsible for a couple of the worst tackles I think I've ever seen on a football pitch. The sectarian singing in the dressing room when they're filming and his encouraging of it and insisting that they do it. The EBT, which was has to be investigated, but some people would say it's as clear a case of bribery as you've seen in football. But I mean, I can't comment on that. That's just what some people would say. But he is not the man to be on his moral high horse. If anything, he'd be lucky if he was in a moral poodle. He's got no position from which to talk here. He injected poison into Rangers when he was there. They were bad, and he exacerbated it. Under him. It seemed to be that despite Maurice Johnson, obviously he signed, but he did that to wind us up. So the sectarianism seemed to become a feature rather than a bug. Despite the fact all he's talking about it seemed to, we'll get rid of that, but that's not what actually was happening, as was evidenced by the multiple scenes of singing and celebration that we saw. So no, I have got absolutely couldn't care less what Graeme Souness has to say. If you think about it, who did we annoy? So we annoyed that in the last couple of weeks. We've annoyed Nigel Farage, Graeme Souness, Jeremy Vine, James Whale, not Jeremy Vine, Jeremy Kyle. Sorry, James Whale. What's her name?
Piers Morgan.
Piers Morgan.
Piers Morgan as well.
Piers Morgan.
The Daily Mail editor, which is always a good sign that we've done our job. We've done our job completely.
I mean, that is a list of people who I would actively want hating me, because they are the scum of the earth, and if they are in the wrong side, if you're ever on the same side of an argument as those people, you need to check yourself and wonder what's going on, because it's that's not where you should be. We've managed to certainly upset the right people, and I have no problem with that at all.
Definitely, especially the Jeremy Kyle one. Somebody for well over a decade on TV for entertainment played on poverty and mental health problems. And made entertainment out of it, and for him to give us a moral compass, a moral lesson of what we should be believing is talk about Souness being hypocritical. That is the most hypocritical thing I've ever actually heard. But last word on Graeme Souness. Graeme Souness is a bovines behind. So let's move on quickly.
Well, I would love to tell the old the Piers Morgan joke. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to do that, am I? Or did you hear it in the comments?
No, I haven't heard it in the comments, but I think we'll just kind of move on.
I'll put it in the comments afterwards.
We'll err on the safe side here, because we didn't want to be. I've already lost quite a few team members on a Wednesday, John. I didn't want to lose another one, eh? So sacked. I know. Again, the problem. Annual results came out yesterday. The headline figures were £6.1 million in profit. We've got 30 million quid in the bank. Player sales for the previous financial year totaled 29 million. Player purchases were 38.4 million, which also include this season. And the operating expenses, which I find absolutely astonishing, are 91 £8.7 million.
Well,
I am not an accountant by any stretch of the means, so I leave this to the people who like get sexually aroused with stuff like this when they actually have a look at figures and that to tell me what I should be feeling about this. But the fact is, we've got £30 million in the bank, but our operating expenses are over £90 million. Are the two eye-watering things for me.
Well, the last couple of years aren't really comparable to anything, obviously, because of COVID. So I went back to 2019. Operating expenses were 86.9 million. So that's an increase of 4.8 million. And that increase in operating expenses almost perfectly correlates with the decrease in profit from that year, because the profit from that year was 11.3 million. And now we're at 6.1 million. You add 4.8 million in increased operating expenses, and there you are, you're nearly at that figure. So we're almost back to where we were sort of 2019. But again, coming out of that, the one thing that I would that concerns me, I hope there's a lot of investment going on here in the background, because if you take that record player sales, and it is a record player sales, and the fact we really only invested £9.8 million, £9.98 million. Now, one thing that's remarkable and the other thing that's concerning, so the thing that's remarkable is that with £9.98 million, we have replaced almost an entire team. So we replaced our top scorer, we replaced our captain, we replaced the core of the team, our best player, and the manager. So all of that was done with basically £9.98 million. Now, we've spent more than that even a few seasons ago. We spent 12 million, I think, net, just before we blew the 10. So, there is an issue about sustainability here, because obviously that's on the back of record player sales. So at the start of this season, what we were thinking was, well, where's the next big sale coming from? Because we have cashed in on all of our assets here. So where are we, this player trading model, it doesn't work if you don't have players that are worth anything. Now, subsequently, we've done some sensational transfer business, and we obviously have players who are worth a great deal of money. But our scouting really needs to be unbelievable, because we had, as I say, I don't expect that player trading that we did off the back of Ange signing and Peter Lawwell's boy coming in. I don't expect that's going to be easy to replicate, ever. We got some, I went on about it the other week. We got unbelievable players for peanuts, absolute peanuts. And the chances of that, chances of lightning striking twice, are fairly slim. But that's why I did really like the signings of Haksabanovic and Abdelgard, not a Billy Guard, as Colin Watt was saying the other day. Sounds like he's a prison warden in a Rangers prison, doesn't it?
Billy Guard. Is that me steward boy? Is that what he is? He's a Billy Guard.
But so those, I like that, because obviously they're distressed assets. I know it's pretty. It's sort of cruel when you think about it like that, but that's business, and we have to be sharp. We have to be sharper than anyone else. We have to be faster than anyone else. We have to be more aware than anyone else, because we need to turn, players at a few million into multi-million pound players. And I'm hoping, now that Michael Nicholson's in charge, that what we will see is not what we've seen in previous years, which player trading means we sell all our, we buy players in at a certain level, we sell them for a big profit, and then we just go back to zero again. And so you're constantly just buying in the project players and trying to make something of them. Now, if you look at the likes of, Porto, Benfica, people like that, who've made a real success out of this model, you don't keep going back to zero. If you sell a Kieran Tierney for 24 million, the next guy you buy should be 10 million, 12 million. He shouldn't be another £2 million player, because you're just resetting the clock constantly. That's the thing, again, that concerns me about people saying, this team has time to settle in, or just at the start, we've got next year and all the rest of it. Do we? Do we really? You know, because this team's going to start getting picked apart in January. So, you know, how much time do we really have? We need, and the problem is, you know, it's like we're under constant pressure because we need European success almost instantly so that we can buy or improve or replace players who will be picked off us by bigger clubs, because we can't stop that. So this team in its current format is unlikely to survive a season, you know, is unlikely to survive beyond the season, certainly. So, I mean, we can't go into next year saying it's another transitional year and all the rest of it. So, you know, we really need to be investing wisely. We need to be scouting tremendously well. We can't rely on just guys that the manager knew, and you know, because that just won't do. So before all of this happened, the big concern was what's happening with the football department. You know, what's happening with recruitment? What's happening with scouting? You know, do we have an actual department there? And if we do have a department there, are we sure that their department is going to stay and not just leave a la Brendan Rodgers? I mean, I was looking back. I mean, one of the things in 2019, we had 86.9 million of revenue. And the costs were in excess of that, right? So where we made money was we disposed of players for 17.7 million. And the other amount of money we got was 8.8 million for Rodgers and the team that he took with him. And as we know, he took everyone with him who wasn't locked down or whose name wasn't John Kennedy. So, you know, we can't have Ange doing that. Now, if I was working for Ange, I'd want to follow Ange. Do you know what I mean? I think you would. But Ange has never in the past, though, taken anyone with him. You know, he's tended to do these things solo. But we need to be set up. And this whole conversation was happening constantly at the end of the, you know, before we signed Ange. But now it's just died off because we've been successful and Ange is great at his job. But we need to have a football department that survives beyond Ange. You know, we need to have these structures in place, and it's just not good enough to say, no, it's fine, you know, concentrate on the football. Yeah, but if, you know, this is, as we know, this is a generational club. We want our kids to watch and their kids to watch. So in order for there to be success in the future, we need to have those structures and systems in place. And I don't know if that's been done. There's been no word of it, really. There's only word of occasional bits of individual recruitment, but there's been no word of what system's actually in place. And, you know, Ange is the kind of a guy who takes charge, so it's going to look great at the moment, and everything looks fine and dandy. We're doing really well at the moment, but what happens in the future? So, you know, we need to look at that.
As a worry that, as you say, sometimes Celtic claimed to be a Champions League club, but played at it. And they done thing on a sort of ad hoc basis. And when Rodgers left, that showed the complete and utter. By the way, that's been ripped out the club. And the first thing the club done was go, well, do we actually need to replace that? No, do we need to replace that? Do we actually need that? Do we actually need to do this? And I remember Postecoglou talking about this last year when he arrived. He couldn't believe that we didn't have a head of sports science. He's going, what do you mean you haven't got a head of sports science? You're meant to be an elite football club and you haven't got a head of sports science. You allowed him to go to Leipzig and decided not to replace him. He decided and you say that structure has to be in the club. Maybe that's what Mark Wall's been brought in to actually try to build up based on his experience at the City Group. But even then, has anybody not even know if Mark Wall's actually started his job? Has anybody actually ever seen him? Has he actually came out and ever done an interview to say this is my job and this is what I'm going to be doing and this is my plan for the club? He hasn't even came out and say that. So for me, that's like a bit of what they're actually hiding. I don't know. That's just me being paranoid. That's just me really being paranoid. But I understand. I'm completely on board with that, John. I want to see this club set up like a modern, progressive club. And the point that you made about the transfer fees for Porto and that, it made me thinking, Edward Diver, that's what Ajax and Napoli do. Ajax were the club that I thought of. They never used to spend big money, but over the last couple of years, you've seen them You've seen them bringing in no big names, but guys at 12, 13 million pound to help their development through. And even though, like, the year after they got to the Champions League semi-final, they kind of fell off a cliff. They made £70 million worth of sales. Took them a season. You look at them now; they look quite a fair side. They look like a fair side now, and that's something that we need to have a look at, and we need to have that structure at place. We can't have the micromanagement, as you say, John, that we've had over the last decade, apart from Brendan Rodgers. We have to move away from that.
But I mean that's it. It's people who don't know or aren't willing to concede the limits of their knowledge or responsibility. So the reason, in my view, why things have changed so much since Michael Nicholson came in is because he knows what his job is. His job is CEO. His job is to tie up those deals. He is not head of football recruitment. He is not head of scouting. He understands what the limits of his responsibility are and the limits of his knowledge are. And in doing so, he's given Ange and the team that he has free rein to actually get the footballing side of things done. And we've seen an enormous improvement as a result of that. So, it's just a matter of people knowing their jobs and accepting. And when you're going through, they must do, a risk analysis of the business. They must, do internal, strategy. So, I mean, you have to be looking at your own departments and thinking, okay, where are the strengths? Where are the weaknesses? In any large PLC, that's what you do. So I'd be amazed if that's not now happening. I think Michael Nicholson seems like the kind of guy who get that started, get it rolling. But we need to have it because you started off the conversation saying would Ange go and would he not? I'm saying I hope he doesn't. I don't think he will for a good while yet, but we don't know. So we need to have structures in place. Is what happens when Ange goes. And that's you have to be thinking. If I'm the chief executive, that's the greatest risk to the team as it stands at the moment. What happens if the manager goes? So you have to be constantly planning for that. And that means putting the right structures in place. So we just have to hope that's what's happening.
We do have to hope that's what's happening in the background, but it's always interesting to see the celebration by some members of the Celtic fan community when these figures are released. I'm like, well, it didn't really mean nothing to me if we're not winning games of football in the park and we're not maybe punching above our weight. Roddy McDonald's succession planning, John, I think that's something that we haven't done really well at all over this period, this generational period of domination, which we actually are still in. Monty comes in, Henrik first via Porto. Since I mentioned Porto, Henrik is talking about Seville. It was Henrik Larsson's 51st birthday the other day. And I noticed the UEFA put up quite a nice wee tribute to the man, the Europa League competitions, and only if somebody had wrote a brilliant book of poetry about Henrik Larsson, which is available to buy on Acsom.net, and was used by Celtic a couple of weeks ago for the anniversary of the 6-2 game. So there you go, plug gets in there. But happy birthday, Henrik, because I know that you watch it.
I'm only a year older than Henrik Larsson, but clearly my paper round was pretty extreme. When you're comparing the two of us, you wouldn't tell I was only a year older. I look like his granda.
Didn't he say that? There
was one thing I thought was interesting yesterday. Just go back to the financial just for a second. David Lowe tweeted a thing from the Celtic accounts about UEFA introduced significant enhancements in financial governance by introducing new financial sustainability regulations to replace the previous fair play regulations, and he goes on to explain what those might be. But that was suggested as one of the main reasons why there may have been a lull in transfer activity coming out of Govan. I think that's interesting if things are getting stricter from that point of view.
I do find that quite unusual that they actually says that they played a major part in the FFP changes, which are coming in from 2024. And there's a structural change of the Champions League coming in for 2024 as well. But then we played a team 2 weeks ago called Real Madrid that are £600 million in debt. We're playing the clubs that get to the last 8 of the Champions League are owned by dirty oil money or owned by royal syndicates that are trying to wash their image. And you look at Barcelona, what they £1 billion in debt. Atletico Madrid, £400 million in debt. Forgive me if I didn't believe an organisation like UEFA really wants to tackle something like that when all their big names are swimming like Scrooge McDuck and borrowed money.
Well, they don't, and it's one of the things that's killing the game. There is nothing remotely fair, and it's supposed to be a level playing field, but it's not. When you've got actual states, countries, sports washing their reputations with billions of pounds through football clubs, and then the very, very, very light touch regulations of financial fair play, which are really easy to get round. It makes the game inherently unfair and, in my view, indecent. There is nothing equitable about. You get the likes of Barcelona who are £1 billion in debt, £1 billion, right? They owe people, they owe players. They're now trying to negotiate with players. They're trying to do negotiate. Sort of put down loans with players, and trying to minimise them. We say, we owe you 27.8 million in wages, but how about you settle for 5 million? Stuff like that. That's not right. If you can't afford your commitments, if you can't maintain those commitments, then you have to do some serious restructuring, and it needs to be forced upon you if you're not doing it yourself. But you've got clubs that are £1 billion in debt, 400 million in debt. What's Man United? Hundreds of millions in debt. They were bought with debt. They were bought. There was no money involved in buying them. No actual money was put down. It was all debt, that was loaded onto that club. There is something fundamentally wrong about that. Absolutely fundamentally wrong. The way that clubs should be run is the way the likes of Celtic are run. You have to be sustainable. If you're not sustainable, you need to cut your spending. You don't just increase your spending by borrowing more money or going looking for a sugar daddy who is going to, try and finance you through so that if you look at the bubble that the EPL is even, if it wasn't for that television money, God help them if anything happens to Sky or that television money, because, they'll all be bust immediately. So the game is inherently unfair. The funding of the game is inherently unfair and inherently indecent, inherently unethical. And we are supposed to have regulatory authorities who deal with that sort of thing. But as always, in football, as in life, money talks. So there'll be money getting, swished around there, as we saw with the previous two lads. They got off with that one, though, didn't they? With money changing hands, World Cup and all the rest of it. I hesitate to criticise Gianni Infantino because he sent a nice letter after my dad died, which was nice to have. But still, I don't know the boy, and the whole operation is inherently corrupt.
It is inherently corrupt. That is a word for UEFA. The Champions League is an inherently corrupt competition. It is that, and even though we like taking part, there's part of me I feel sick to the pit of the stomach that we're actually involved with such a corrupt organisation. Ideguchi CSC, the new Man City sponsor, is a fake gambling court based in Abu Dhabi where betting is illegal. Barely even try to hide it now. In the article I read from Forbes magazine, it actually says Man City have no debt. No debt. And I'm going, well, that's that. Are you sure about that? Chelsea now have no debt because they've just been took over.
Yeah.
And you're like, well,
that's not true.
That's not true. That is not true.
It's the same way as Google and Facebook and all the rest of them don't make any money. And Amazon, they don't make any money in this country and they don't pay any taxes because their profits are distributed elsewhere. So, you're just moving money around balance sheets to benefit you. And if HMRC can't get to grips with it, it's very unlikely UEFA are going to get to grips with it. So, it's going to be the way for a while to come, but it's going to take the liquidation of a massive club in order for a reset to happen in the game.
I can tell what's just going to happen in the comments here. After you've mentioned that word, John.
No.
Liquidation doesn't happen.
I said the liquidation of a massive club. Let's just be clear.
You're talking about Amazon and that there. That's what happens with the profits in my book. There's no profits for anybody watching for the HMRC. No profits whatsoever. So just go away and leave me alone. Let's talk about football, because we've been 40 minutes and we haven't really spoke about football. We've just spoke about
what's that? Let me start by laying out my style. Postecoglou out. Shocking. Get him out. But can I just say, Kev, can I just start chronologically? Just going back to Shakhtar?
Yes. Let's go back to Shakhtar. Let's reverse to was it Tuesday night or Wednesday night? Tuesday. Wednesday. And
I am going to say things that people aren't going to agree with, but this is how I feel about it. I don't insist that you feel the same way. You are not required to respect how I feel or applaud how I feel. But this is the way I feel about it. You will remember, if you tuned in last week, Wednesday pre-game, spent the whole second pod going on about Mudryk, going on about what we needed to do to keep Mudryk quiet. I had suggested, only half jokingly, like a Ralston-Juranovic combination on that side with nobody going over a halfway line. And I have to say, before the game started, I was so annoyed. I was just so annoyed. The one player that I wouldn't have put on that side of the pitch was Jota. I just would not, he was never going to be tracking back or defensive enough to stop Mudryk, right? And right enough, their goal comes from a full-back who's got all day in possession because Jota wasn't closing him down. And he plays a good ball into the middle of the field that cuts out O'Reilly and McGregor, who both lunge at it and miss. And then as soon as that boy in the midfield gets it, Juranovic is still looking at him going, what's he going to do? I'll tell you what he's going to do, Joseph. Mudryk, that's what he's going to do. Right? Did you do any pre-game prep, big man? Come on. You know where that ball's going. What are you standing looking at him for? It's Mudryk. It's always Mudryk. Right? So plays it to Mudryk, who Mudryk was running 2 seconds before. Right? So Juranovic does a good job. I'm being a bit hard on Juranovic, you know what I mean? It was an instant reaction, but Mudryk was already on his shoulder, turned, facing the goal and sprinting before Juranovic even turns. Right? And we knew that would happen. We knew it would happen. It wasn't unforeseeable. We talked about it for the whole show, and I was absolutely raging. And then people, criticising Joe Hart, but to be fair, I haven't watched it back, as I tend to do. Joe Hart was gambling on a low ball. The percentage ball was the ball between his legs, and that's what he thought was going to happen. So when Mudryk finished high, he was just sort of flapping at it. So I'm not really blaming him, but I am blaming that system. It was just so annoying that guy should score, because we said before, they're as close to a one-man team as you like. And even the one that got chopped off, that Shved put in the back of the net, was Mudryk again. And this time he drifted inside and he was left alone, and he drifted past McGregor and O'Reilly and cuts down, makes the run through the inside. And it's like, that he should have been man-marked, in my view. That's what we were saying before, as close to man-marking as we've ever seen, because he is their one danger. And it was so annoying. I was raging anyway before the game started. So, anyway.
I know anybody that's in the WhatsApp group with John would have knew that he was raging before the game.
So, it's... but then, of course, we went on to play, and I think, I'm hoping this is not becoming a pattern at the time. It was very frustrating. I counted 8 chances, 5 good/very good chances, and we are as clinical as heart surgery in a sewer. So it's just, we are not, and actually now take the St Mirren game into account as well. When you're looking back, I'm not sure Kyogo or Giakoumakis are actually in very good form. Especially, I mean, like everyone was anonymous yesterday on Sunday, but Kyogo didn't contribute anything, and Giakoumakis, again missed another when he came on. So, and in that game, very good chances. Two of the very good chances actually fell to Giakoumakis. And I wrote down all the chances and what was happening with them, just because I was trying to get a handle on how many we actually could have scored and how many were realistic. And there were at least 5 really, really, really good chances. So, I was very frustrated, I have to say. And I think, yes, you can always take the point of view. I'm the same as most people. I'm conflicted, right? It's a point away from home in the Champions League. That's very, very important. Of course it's important. But we should have won the game. We should have won the game, and it could be the one that we really regret not winning. It could be the 2 points away from home that we really regret not getting. It could come back to bite us, because despite the fact that Shakhtar beat Leipzig 4-1, I think now, Leipzig are as strong, if not stronger. I mean, to me, that was probably a freak result, and I think Leipzig are a real danger. So I am not as good. What we've seen from that is, and given what the other thing we discussed about the game as well, given how Shakhtar had been stripped of so many of their first team talents because of the situation that they're in, it doesn't strike me that we are, we played well and we should have taken the chances and we could have finished, a lot more of them. But that's what they did. That's what you do at this level. You have to be clinical. You have to be. I mean, I think the game against Leipzig, what was it? Shakhtar got, 5 shots and scored 4. We are just not converting, and it is a problem now. It is a problem now. We have to be converting these chances, and there's no point in saying, that, fingers crossed in Europe and that all will be well. If that's the level that we're at, if we're creating those chances and we're not able to take them, and it's more than just the fact that, it was just a bit unlucky. If we are not good enough to take those chances, then, we sort of found our level, and our level is, getting a few points and draws. Yes, we have come a long way and all the rest of that, but I'm just, judging it on where we are at the moment, what we were hoping for, I suppose. And I was hoping for much better. That's where I am with it, Kev. I don't know where you stand.
That's where you were at it. Obviously, I done the post-match with Kevin McCluskey, and I was extremely disappointed not to take 3 points at that point. I actually felt like a right kick in the hormones at that point, that we didn't actually get 3 points because of the number of chances that we actually created on the night, and how dominant we were, especially in the second half. Now, you done your research, and you told us that Shakhtar were a one-man team, and that proved to be the case. The longer I watched the game, I agree with you that that result they got against Leipzig was a complete and utterly freak result. And after the game, I was more positive that point away from him, I think for us, means we're not finishing bottom of this group. I think we're going to get European football after Christmas. Maybe it will only be in the Champions League, that the 3 points might have got us, but having a look now at this group I'm at, we're not finishing bottom. I can't see Shakhtar winning another game in that group stage. They're not going to handle coming to Celtic Park, I don't think. And Leipzig, as you say, now look a different animal. And this double header is between us and Leipzig is who's going to finish second. So we're actually now in a good, old-fashioned home and away knockout tie, I reckon, and where that's going to go. Your point regarding Mudryk, I'm going to go with the folk who know about football, the tactics. And I'm going to go with the coaching staff, and I think the coaching staff are going to agree with Polymorphos here, because I know that I agree with him. We kept Mudryk quiet in the large part. Quality players will find ways to hurt you regardless of the game plan against them. I think the Celtic coaching staff will point to your point, Mr. Hughes, and go like that. One error, he done hee-haw the rest of the game. He done nothing the rest of the game. We completely dominated that game. That proved that the game plan was right. With regards to Jota, he somehow managed to get man in the match. It was really, really frustrating for me. I didn't think he was man in the match. I thought Greg Taylor was man in the match. I thought Jota was like trying to light a birthday candle in a wind. He got to a certain point, it went up, then it got blown out. He needs to learn to produce top quality at that level. But I'm like you, I'm worried about the amount of chances we're missing at that level. If we start taking those chances, we are actually going to, we're actually going to be like in no danger whatsoever. But I'll put a question to you. The chances that we miss in Europe, do you reckon we score them in the Scottish Premier League? Do you reckon it's just the players that are maybe a bit more nervous playing on the Champions League stage?
Well, I reckon we don't create the number of chances or as clear-cut chances as we do in the Premier, so it's difficult.
Which is obvious. It's a jump up in level.
You know, I mean, I was, you know, even if you look back at Maeda, and there's a hypothetical question here that I had this argument with a friend of mine: is Maeda? Is he the guy that's creating these chances but he can't finish them? So he's brilliant at getting into space, and he's the guy that's on the end of these balls, not great at finishing them. And if he's great at creating them, my argument was, what's the point if he can't finish them? Because I was looking at the ball across the face of goal when he sort of lunged at it. But he didn't need to lunge at it, and he took it in the wrong foot. He tried to take it on his left instead of taking it on his right back across the goalie. He never looks like he's going to score, So you've got issues like that. Big Gigi had one he definitely should have taken, and one you would have hoped he could have taken. So there are levels to this, right? And I'm not suggesting otherwise. Obviously, are much, much better teams, much better defences. And the chances, but that's why you have to take these chances, because you're not going to get as many. And what was the other concern about Jota playing there was, and I think it's been, we've seen it in the last couple of games, a couple of things. First of all, when we signed Haksabanovic, I asked on Twitter, I said, why are we signing another left-sided player? There are other positions that need filled. Why are we signing another left-sided player? I don't get it. And I was told that he can play anywhere across the middle. But apparently not. Apparently he plays on the left, right? And that means our best left-sided player, Jota, is going to the right, where he has not been effective, right? I don't think he's been playing well on the right. I don't think he's contributed anywhere near as much on the right as he does on the left. So how good is Haksabanovic? Now, he set up that goal, but he didn't do much else the rest of the game. But he set up that goal. I'm pretty sure Jota would have done that, or could have done that. I would still be happier with Jota on the left. I'm not happy with this idea that we sacrifice our best player. And I know Haksabanovic looks a real deal. He looks a great wee player, potentially. Though I wasn't appreciating his attitude yesterday, getting a strop on with ball boys and all the rest of it. I don't mind people getting frustrated, but I don't like that sort of thing, So anyway, but at least he's trying, and he came on and you could see he was frustrated. He is a good player, but I wouldn't play Jota out of position for him. I'm sorry, if he plays across the front, play him in the middle. If he's good enough, play him in the middle, because Kyogo and Gigi haven't exactly been burning it up. So if he's that good, play him in the middle, play him out of position, and let's see how he does. But Jota's our best player. And, when you go to St Mirren and stuff like that on Sunday, that's the difference between us and them, is those wee bits of magic, right? And if you're not creating those wee bits of magic, those wee bits of class, those wee bits of real quality, then we are not far enough away from them to be, winning those games easily or winning those games handily. And we saw that. We've seen that for years and years and years. There is not a big enough gap, despite what we're paying. I think Alan Morrison made the point on one of the shows the other day. It's not linear between how much you spend and how much you dominate people by. You could nearly be spending 100 times as much to be guaranteeing 9-0 results, every week. Not 10 times as much. So we do have a massive advantage, but it's not that big. These are better players, but the gap between them and well coached, really aggressive and determined players is not that big. So we can't afford to be. And again, coming back to St Mirren, then I suppose, as everyone said, the selection and all the rest of it. But again, when I saw that selection, much like I saw the selection for the Shakhtar game, my first thought was, wait a minute, aren't St Mirren a better side than Ross County? Because it was effectively the same team. I think Siegrist, Hart was in for Siegrist, Taylor was in for Bernabei, and I think Kyogo was in for GG. But, it's essentially the same team. And I just thought, I think St Mirren, Then I went back quickly before the game and had a wee look at their record and the number of clean sheets. Was it 7 they had since April and stuff like that? So, they're going to be a difficult side to break down. And I think you'll remember, Kev, as well, on last week's show, we were talking about Aaron Moy, and I said, not for me. I basically, he's a finisher, not a starter, and he, I wanted to see a bit more by way of testicular fortitude, I think was my exact quote. So, and that's basically what happened. I watched the game back for my sins, and things I do for this podcast, I really didn't want to watch that back. I can tell you, it was brutal, absolutely brutal. But the thing about it was, that midfield with Moy and Turnbull is where direct play goes to die, right? So, the passing was crisp and accurate. I would suggest that Moy's pass rate was almost 100%, as was Turnbull's. But the problem is that's because the only thing they do quickly is take the safe option. And whenever they're trying to do something more creative, they're far more ponderous. They're far slower to think about it, to see the opportunity, to make the pass. So, although the play round about it, even in the first half when I was watching it back and it wasn't annoying me because I already knew the result, there was some nice passing, some crisp passing, but we weren't drawing them out. We did not. We failed to draw them out. And because we failed to draw them out, God, it was so reminiscent of some Neil Lennon games. And, they just park the bus and we're just battering them and we just cannot get through. And you look at the wingers, I don't think either winger beat a man all day or even tried to beat a man all day. Take the ball, pass it back, try to create a wee triangle. It's not working. St Mirren held their lines really well, 80% possession. And, again, just with no direction or purpose or, the pace was there on the passes, but not fast enough. Do you know what I mean? And not purposeful enough and not creative enough. And I think we learned, a hard lesson yesterday. We have excellent stand-ins, but not an excellent second 11. Those players individually can come in and do a great job in a good team, but we cannot just pump out a second 11 and think they're going to win. Not at anywhere from, I would say, mid-table Premiership upwards. We can't do that. So I don't know if you really enjoyed the game, Kev.
No, I didn't enjoy the game. It was like getting force-fed a cat spew sandwich through a straw. And I'm no way would I actually want to watch it back. I've got no inclination to watch it back whatsoever. What I would say is we can't go for saying we've got a strong squad to a bad squad. And it hasn't got the strength and depth. When I saw the team, I was probably different from anybody else. I went, I'm quite happy with that side. That's got enough quality there to beat 11 jobbing spanners and St Mirren kits. And it should have been enough to beat 11 jobbing spanners and St Mirren kits, because every one of your starting 11 would get into anybody else's starting 11 bar Rangers. And so it should be good enough. I'm not going to blame Postecoglou. He made the changes. It was one of the games where everybody looked like they had never seen a football before. It was one of them where everything just completely was utterly terrible on the day. And when we lost the second goal, I went like that. I went like, move on. We're not getting back into this. This game's gone for us. It doesn't matter what you try here. We're not getting back into this. St Mirren have now got a bit between their teeth, and they're going to just hang on. They've given them a 2-goal advantage. We've been utterly rotten the whole day. There's not really much you can actually do bar move on. But I thought there was a lot of overreaction and hyperbole to certain performances in that day, especially about Moy and Turnbull. I look up front. You've got Abada, who scored numerous goals last season. You've got Kyogo, who scored numerous goals last season. And you've got Maeda, who scored 7 or something this season already. You're talking about guys that should score goals. But if we're not creating nothing, we had the midfield, Moy, an Australian international, the Scotland international, and David Turnbull, who's in the Scotland squad as well. That's better. That's good enough to beat a Stevie Robertson jobbing side that will amount to nothing. So my blame is completely on the players. And Postecoglou is the only fault I'm going to put in Postecoglou is he put too much trust in the players. But then he changed it. He hooked them at half time. And the guys that we actually think are first team players done hee-haw as well, done absolutely nothing as well. So,
well, in terms of people saying things about certain players, the one thing I would say about Moy, that first goal, I mean, he was so switched off. It reminded me. I remember one time. I spent 5 minutes looking for my phone, using the torch on my phone to find it. That's how switched off he was. That's how switched off I was. He wasn't paying any attention. The boy got the run on him, and there's your goal. But this thing about the centre half's being dominated, on watching that back, that's not really the impression I got. I mean, no. that second goal. That came from a mistake by Callum McGregor because there's a long throw in. Taylor wins the ball at the front post. It goes into the middle of the box. But Callum McGregor heads it back across the box reflexively, heads it back across the box just in the direction that he's facing. Jens is now on his back foot, standing still, moving backwards. The St Mirren boy gets a run on him, puts it across the goal. And Stephen Welsh has the boy, by the scruff of the shirt. Now, if the ref had seen it, it'd be a definite penalty. He couldn't have been holding on to him anymore. And it is a mistake by Welsh because he was holding on to the boy's shirt. When he let it go, he just missed the ball. Mm-hmm. And the boy behind him just headed it in. He didn't jump over him. He didn't dominate him. There was no... I don't know where this narrative is coming from that the centre-halves were dominated. That's not the case. Now, the centre-halves, are they as good as the first choice pair? No. But that's why they're the second choice pair. Oh. Do you know what I mean? It's hardly a surprise. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that Cameron Carton, Vickers and Starfelt are better. Of course they are. They're the first choice pair. So we're playing our second choice guys. They didn't get dominated, but there was at least one mistake, right? At least one. But of all the things that happened in that game, like Moy making his mistake, Stephen Welsh made a wee mistake, cost us goals. But it was the fact that we had 80% possession. And we did not manage to break their lines. We weren't getting any runners in behind. We weren't getting any passes through. We were playing in front of them the whole time. The midfield constantly had their backs to their goal. It wasn't direct enough. It wasn't fast enough. And we weren't good enough at drawing them out. It wasn't Ange ball as we've come to know it. Because Ange ball, we invite them onto us. That's the whole point. That's what's dangerous about it. What's exciting about it. We invite them onto us. And they were pressing hard, but they weren't pressing high, so they were sitting in their lines and they were very comfortable in those lines and we just weren't breaking them. And we could have played in front of them all day. And even when, in the second half, you had Haksabanovic and Jota and all coming on, they tried to get round them, but they were fairly resolute and they were lying deep. because they were deep lying, it's not as if you could kick it past them and you'd chase on it, really, and they were, because they were catching you before you had a chance. So it was, go ahead.
I think as well, John, like, I didn't think St Mirren were that good. I didn't think they had to be good to actually beat us because we didn't put them under pressure. What we've actually come to know from an Ange Postecoglou Celtic was not there on Sunday whatsoever, no matter the 16, 17 players that we actually used. And look, the only thing that I regret that we haven't got a game this week to actually get it out of our system. We're going to need to wait a week on Saturday until we play Motherwell, and that's the only thing I've got to regret about. I've got no regret about the result. I've got no regret about the team selection. We were absolutely ranked rotten, and we got what we deserved, and that's it. I mean, you just need to move on. Before we go, because we've been on for an hour and 4 minutes, John. No excuses, but
sorry, most of that was me talking. I think. Sorry about that.
No excuses, but what about the strip clash? That strip class was absolutely terrible. It didn't change the fact that we were rotten, but it was. I liked that kitty, but whoever thought wearing it at Paisley was a good idea needs their head looked at. I reckon we'll only see that top again. I don't think we'll see that top again this season because there's no many occasions we can actually wear it, and it's been proved that we can't wear it in Love Street.
That was terrible. It really was difficult to tell when you were watching it on the TV. It made it really, really awkward to tell. So it was a very strange decision. But again, it didn't affect the actual football. So that was the first poor choice of the day. There were many others to follow. No,
Kaiser comes in. Did the strip class affect St Mirren? No, it didn't. And we're not blaming the kits. We're not blaming the clash for us being rotten and looking like we had never actually seen a football before in our lives for the whole of 90 minutes. We're not actually blaming.
It did affect them. It inspired them. That's what it did. All their players were hiding behind ours or vice versa. But it certainly. They were the ones that got boosted. But look, it was just. It's not. I don't like the strip. My son-in-law has one. I'm not a big fan of it, but again, sort of blend into the background.
I do like it, but I reckon we'll only see it again this season. Paul Morpher says, I've not heard your thoughts on MG's loan deal, Kev. Want to know if it was juicy enough. It was so juicy it could quench your thirst, pal. The Mikey Johnson loan move. I said I wanted Mikey Johnson to get a juicy loan move and not go to Aberdeen or somewhere like that. So it's really, really juicy. It's like Umbongo. No, remember Umbongo in the 1980s? It's as juicy as Umbongo. Right, I'm leaving us on that note. John, you've been fantastic as usual. Lads, thanks very much. Remember, dinna be bams to each other, and I'll see you all later. Hail, hail.
Hail, hail.